Let's talk upgrades coming to the 2025 Canada GP. We make our way back to North America to race in a track that a lot of fans love and always brings a very fun race and qualifying session that at it. It's got some pretty close walls, and we tend to see a lot of upgrades here, even with it not being very convenient when it comes to how the packages arrive typically from Europe for these teams. But it's a good track to test it out. A lot of curves, you got your slow speed corners, traction is very important, and that straight line speed can either be a killer in the race or completely ruin it. But the circuit we have here in Canada is a lot of fun, and we do have two big teams bringing some big upgrades and a couple of other teams that I want to talk about, some rumors that we can get into. But right before I get into that, I wanted to thank you guys for being amazing. Thank you so much for the support on the channel. Truly means a lot. I see all of you and it means the world to me. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe, as well as checking out the website, put in your submissions for this week's Unchained Race Week Challenge. In Canada, want to compete against all of you. And of course, for you guys to win some prizes, go ahead, check it out. Thank you all for the support. Let's get started with what's coming to Canada. Firstly, let's talk about what's not coming. We're not going to talk too much about circuit-specific stuff. You can pretty much expect every team here to bring some circuit-specific rear wing, as this is a pretty low downforce track, typically about a 2 out of 5. So that includes the likes of Aston Martin, Alpine, Williams, Haas, Sauber, V-Carb, and that's pretty much it for the teams that should bring circuit-specific stuff. Maybe Red Bull and McLaren as well, but I want to talk about these two teams before I get into the big stuff coming here. For Red Bull, it seems like they're not going to be bringing any more performance upgrades in the season. Maybe some tweaks, but it's not going to be anything big like we have seen in Imola, for example. I think Spain was actually pretty good. It did look like the TD didn't make any change. McLaren is still the strongest car, with Red Bull being second, but maybe a little bit closer. That's probably to do with some upgrades they have brought. This track has been pretty good in the regulation period. Verstappen winning it in 22, 23, and 24 with it being such a chaotic race. I don't think he had the fastest car here. Probably Mercedes and McLaren were actually faster, especially in the wet. But this year, it's going to be tricky. It's very slow speed, and that's kind of where the Red Bull lacks the McLaren. So this should be a pretty dominant track for them. With them not bringing upgrades for the rest of the season, that is a big deal. But looking at the team in orange, that is the team ahead, they've been very hesitant at bringing anything performance related. They brought some stuff in Monaco. Naturally, that happens every single year because the car tends to change a lot, especially in the suspension platform there in Monaco, to give you a little bit more turn in on some of those hairpins that are just nasty and super slow speed. But we've seen a lot of circuit specific rear wings on this car, very little changes in the rear of the car and those rear brake ducts, and obviously with all the talk around the tire chatter. But I have heard from a couple of people and some insiders that within the next 3 races, we should be getting a big package. I'm not sure whether that's going to be Canada. I'm thinking more likely not. And from what I've heard, it should be in Silverstone, because Stella has kind of hinted at that there still is some upgrades in the pipeline, but they have been the strongest cars, so why change what's working? They did end up actually bringing a new floor to Saudi that they only tested for FP1 and FP2, and they're bringing it back, and I don't think we've seen it since then. So some stuff in the pipeline, he's literally only mentioned that if they were to bring upgrades, they would just be to make the setup window a bit bigger, and I guess that would be better for a guy like Lando. But now we can get into the performance upgrades coming here. First thing I'm going to talk about is Mercedes. They did end up bringing a new floor in Spain. We eventually ended up seeing it in FP1 and FP2, even though it wasn't shown on Thursday. And man, that floor edge looks ridiculous. I mean, insane when you compare it to other teams. It's just such a drastic and very aggressive style floor edge wing in comparison to that of even Red Bull and McLaren. But it seems like that is what James Allison has been going for in this floor era continuously, as he's been the main guy for Mercedes ever since 2023. In the middle of it, that floor edge has been upgraded and improvised to now be a monster. That doesn't necessarily mean performance, but it does look very cool. James Allison himself has said, we've got 1 or 2 new bits to take with us and we'll see how we get on. The actual exact nature of these upgrades isn't specified. They are one of the only top teams to actually have a still connected side pod and not have it actually be a pod wing that's a bit disconnected from where the inlet is, which Red Bull ended up actually doing to reduce the drag on the car. I expect Mercedes to end up introducing this at some point. They had this in 23. I don't see why they wouldn't bring it back. But all around making refinements on the car, making it aerodynamically efficient because it is still a bit draggy depending on track to track. The car was super well balanced. I think Spain was a bit of an improvement. It's been a very weak triple header for that team considering how they've been in the season. George has been putting in performance after performance, ended up finishing P4, which is solid, but still he does not have the car to actually be competitive with McLaren's in race pace. Qualifying, he can challenge them, but in race pace, that car is just lacking a 10th or 2, maybe even 3 or 4. I do believe if they bring in a big enough package, there's not going to be a lot more seen. We could see something in Silverstone. I know that Total Wolff has been talking about upgrades consistently coming for the next 3 races. We're finally seeing some new bits. Maybe some changes around the side pods is what I would assume, as we haven't seen much change there yet for the team, unless they're very content with it. But all in all, well-balanced car, but a couple of upgrades coming for the big team, Mercedes. And of course, Ferrari. They're going to be the biggest talking point for the next 3 GPs because this is when the crucial stuff is coming. I made a whole video talking about the rear suspension. That is rumored very heavily to be coming here to Canada. I don't want to just say the exact same things I said in that video, so go ahead and check that out if you want to see me talking about that rear suspension, why it could be a game changer for the car. But we all know Ferrari. It's very hit or miss with them, usually miss, just like Aston Martin when it comes to upgrades, and it takes a lot of time for something to actually develop into a very good upgrade, or if you can even call it an upgrade. Now, something we have heard about a lot, and it was delayed from Spain to here, is a floor upgrade. I talked about this before, supposedly coming in Spain. Now, there is a lot of chatter around this floor upgrade. As Fred Vasseur has hinted at it, he hasn't said much about when it's going to come because he said he doesn't want the expectations to be higher because now they know certain GPs will have upgrades or not. But they did end up delaying this because in Spain, they were hoping that this actual TD was going to change something. Clearly, it did not, but maybe it brought them a little bit closer, but that's just kind of being hopeful. The car towards the end of the stint was still struggling with the same problems it's been having in the season. And Leclerc has done a fine job. Lewis, not so much, but that's to be expected with it being his first season in Ferrari. I still wouldn't give up on him yet. Hopefully these upgrades actually end up coming here in Canada, and when they bolt them on, it does the job. If the rear suspension comes here, that is going to be a big deal. If that fails, then Ferrari is in a bad spot. They put in a lot of work into 2025. It's going to take a lot to really crawl back to that top position, try and fight for the drivers because the constructors is completely out of reach for any team. But let's hope. Let's try and be optimistic for Ferrari. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you guys think any of these upgrades will actually make a change? Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.